welcome to Fireside Fairytales. My name is Rory, and you're watching the Varietal Literature YouTube page. If you've never heard of us before, we're a group of writers from Vancouver who just enjoy narrative, and what we do on Tuesdays here at 6:30 on Fireside Fairytales is we read fairy tales by the fireside. The strange, bizarre, funny, and frankly disturbing old folk and fairy tales from various parts of the world. And we've been reading from a book called Mighty Mikko, a book of Finnish folk tales and fairy tales. And it's been some of the more disturbing and violent stuff, but it is one of the ones that is more specifically focused clearly at like children in its morality. So, which is strange to me. And you'll observe in the title of this video that I note that this is supposedly a children's tale about managing one's anger. Or at least our first story tonight, which is called The Devil's Hide, and is indeed about making boots out of human skin, which is already a hell of a start for a children's moral tale. And if the heat does not catch up to me, and by heat, I don't mean the police, I mean the literal heat of this part of the world that I'm in. I see GS is caught up and that says it's hot, you need a muscle shirt. We'll see. If the heat doesn't catch up to me, we will read The Enchanted Grouse after The Devil's Hide, which is from the same book. It was a story I was going to read last week, but it got too hot. So, we'll see how far I make it. You can join me on this adventure of how long till the sweat gets in his eyes and he just stops reading. Okay. So that's what we're doing. We're reading folktales from Mighty Mikko. Just to be 100% clear, well, actually two things. First of all, if you are watching this not live, in the description below, there will be little timestamps. You can jump ahead to whatever section you want to watch or whatever story you're interested in. But if you, just to be 100% clear, to go back to this, I don't really think these stories are that suitable for kids, at least young kids. Your call, if you're having a kid watch pretty much any of the stuff we've done. But I just want you to know that, like, the title's kind of tongue-in-cheek. Well, these may have been intended for children. I don't really think children should be the one reading them. I think they're more sort of charming folktales of a different time. Your call, though. I did my due diligence. GS says, sounds right up there with Hansel and Gretel with the cannibalistic witch. Yeah. Yeah, a lot of cannibalism, isn't there? Okay, so let's just get to the stories then. Why waste time? If we're running against the heat, time to get running. GS says, child rearing through fear. By the way, if you aren't aware, there is a live chat. Feel free to join in, add your comments as I read. I'll check them out in between. This is The Devil's Hide, a story from Mighty Mikko, a book of Finnish fairy tales and folktales. Its subtitle is The Story of the Boy Who Wouldn't Lose His Temper. There was once a Finnish boy who got the best of the devil. His name was Erkki. Erkki had two brothers who were, of course, older than he. They both tried their luck with the devil and got the worst of it. Then Erkki tried his luck, and they were sure Erkki too would be worsted, but he wasn't. Here is the whole story. One day, the oldest brother of Erkki said, "It's time for me to go out into the world and earn my living. Do you two younger ones wait here at home until you hear how I get on." The younger boys agreed to this, and the oldest brother started out. He was unable to get employment until by chance he met the devil. The devil at once offered him a place, but on very strange terms. "Come work for me," the devil said, "and I promise that you'll be comfortably housed and well fed. We'll make this bargain. The first of us who loses his temper will forfeit to the other enough of his own hide to sole a pair of boots. If I lose my temper first, you may exact from me a big patch of my hide. If you lose your temper first, I'll exact the same from you." The oldest brother agreed to this, and the devil at once took him home and set him to work. "Take this axe," he said, "and go out behind the house. Chop me some firewood." The oldest brother took the axe and went out to the wood pile. Chopping wood is easy enough, he thought to himself, but at the first blow, he discovered that the axe had no edge. Try as he would, he couldn't cut a single log. "I'd be a fool to stay here and waste my time with such an axe," he cried. So he threw down the axe and ran away, thinking to escape the devil and get work somewhere else. But the devil had no intention of letting him escape. He ran after him and then overtook him and asked him what he meant leaving thus without notice. "I don't want to work for you," the oldest brother cried petulantly. "Very well," the devil said, "but don't lose your temper about it." "I will so lose my temper," the oldest brother declared. "The idea! Expecting me to cut wood with such an axe." "Well," the devil remarked, "since you insist on losing your temper, you'll have to forfeit me enough of your hide to sole a pair of boots. That was a bargain." The oldest brother howled and protested, but to no purpose. The devil was firm. He took out a long knife and slit enough off the older brother's hide to sole a pair of big boots. "Now then, my boy," he said, "you may go." The oldest brother went limping home, complaining bitterly at the hard fate that had befallen him. "I'm tired and sick," he told his brothers. "I'm going to stay home and rest. One of you will go out and get work." The second brother at once said that he'd be delighted to try his luck in the world. So he started out, and he had exactly the same experience. At first, he could get no work. Then he met the devil, and the devil made exactly the same bargain with him that he'd made with the oldest brother. He took the second brother home with him, gave him the same dull axe, and sent him out to the woodpile. After the first stroke, the brother threw down the axe in disgust and tried to run off. And the devil, of course, wouldn't let him go until he, too, had submitted to a great loss of a patch of his hide. So it was no time at all before the second brother came limping home, complaining bitterly at fate. "What ails you two?" Urki said. "You go out into the cruel world and hunt work," they told him, "and you'll find out soon enough what ails us. And when you do find out, you needn't come limping home expecting sympathy from us, for you won't get it." So the very next day, Urki started out, leaving his brothers and home nursing their sore backs and their injured feelings. I mean, it's a bit more than sore backs, isn't it? Literally stripped skin off them. Well, Urki had exactly the same experience. At first, he could get work nowhere. Then later, he met the devil and went into his employ on exactly the same terms as his brothers. The devil handed him the same dull axe and sent him out to the woodpile. And at the first blow, Urki knew that the axe had lost its edge and would never cut a single log. But instead of being discouraged and losing his temper, he only laughed. "I suppose the devil thinks I'll lose my hide over a trifle like this," he said. "Well, I just won't." Buckle up, ladies and gentlemen, for the largest leap in logic I've ever seen in a fairy tale. Here we go. He dropped the axe and, going over to the woodpile, began pulling it down, and under all the logs he found the devil's cat. It was an evil-looking creature with a gray head. Ha! Thought Erky. I bet anything you've got something to do with this. He raised the dull axe and with one blow cut off the evil creature's head. Sure enough, the axe instantly recovered its edge, and after that Erky had no trouble at all in chopping as much firewood as the devil wanted. Now we're going to continue with the story, but I do want to pause and point out that apropos of nothing, he tore down a woodpile, found a cat, went, that's why this is dull, chopped its head off. He was so confident in that. Under no circumstances should anyone ever follow the same path of reasoning. Ever. About anything. That night at supper, the devil said, "Well, Erky, did you finish the work I gave you?" "Yes, master, I've chopped all the wood." The devil was surprised. "Really?" "Yes, master. You can go out and see for yourself." "Then you found something in the woodpile, didn't you?" "Nothing but an awful-looking cat." The devil started. "Did you do anything to the cat?" "I only chopped its head off, threw it away." "What?" the devil cried angrily. "Didn't you know that was my cat?" "Oh, now, master," Erky said soothingly. "You're not gonna lose your temper over a little thing like a dead cat, are you? Don't forget our bargain." The devil swallowed his anger and murmured, "No, I'm not gonna lose my temper, and I must say that was no way to treat my cat." Devil's got a point. What did the cat do? Apparently it made an axe doll. The next day, the devil ordered Erky to go out to the forest and bring home some logs on the ox sledge, which is, by the way, I'm sure you know, but it's basically an ox carrying strips of, almost like a sled behind it. You would pile stuff on it and they'd pull it across grasslands and snow and whatever else. Yeah, CGS says maybe it's typical lore like witches with their mediums and stuff. I think it's implied that the cat was like a demon. "My black dog will go with you," he said. "And as you come home, you're to take exactly the same course the dog takes." Well, Erky went out to the forest, loaded the ox sledge with logs, and then drove the oxen home following the devil's black dog. As they reached the devil's house, the black dog jumped through a hole in the gate. "I must follow master's orders," Erky said to himself. So, like a sane person, he cut up the oxen into small pieces and put them through the same hole in the gate. He chopped up the logs and pitched them through the hole, and he broke up the sledge into pieces small enough to follow the oxen and the logs. Then he crept through the hole himself. That night, at supper, the devil said, "Well, Erky, did you come home the way I told you?" "Yes, master, I followed the black dog." "What?" the devil cried. "Do you mean to say you brought the oxen and the sledge?" Sorry, I only bumbled a bit there. There we go. "And the logs through your hole in the gate?" "Yes, master, that's what I did." "But you couldn't," the devil declared. "Well, master," Erky said, "just go out and see." The devil went outside, and when he saw the method by which Erky had carried out the orders, he was furious. But Erky quieted him, saying, "There now, master, you're not going to lose your temper over a trifling matter like this, are you? Remember our bargain." No, the devil said, again swallowing his anger. "I'm not gonna lose my temper. But I want you to understand, Erky, that I think you've acted very badly. All that evening, the devil fumed and fussed about Erky. "We've got to get rid of that boy. That's all there is about it," he said to his wife. Of course, whenever Erky was in sight, the devil tried to smile and look pleasant, but as soon as Erky was gone, he was back at once to his grievance. He declared emphatically, "There's no living in peace and comfort with such a boy around." "Well," his wife said, "if you feel that way about it, why don't you kill him tonight when he's asleep? You could throw his body into the lake and no one be the wiser." "That's a fine idea," the devil said. "Wake me up sometime after midnight, and I'll do it." Now, it's a fairy tale. What do you think happened? He overheard the plan. So that night he kept awake. When he knew from their snoring that the devil and his wife were sound asleep, he slipped over to their bed, quietly lifted the devil's wife in his arms, and without awakening her, placed her gently in his own bed. Then he put on some of her clothes and laid himself down beside the devil in the wife's place. Presently he nudged the devil awake. "What do you want?" the devil mumbled. "Tss," Erky whispered. "Isn't it time we got up and killed Erky?" "Yes," the devil answered. "It is. Come along." They got up quietly, and the devil reached down a great sword from the wall. Then they crept over to Erky's bed, and the devil with one blow cut off the head of the person who was lying there asleep. "Now," he said, "we'll just carry out the bed and all and dump it into the lake." So Erky took one end of the bed and the devil the other, and stumbling and slipping in the darkness, they carried it down to the lake and pitched it in. "That's a good job done," the devil said with a laugh. Then they went back to bed together, and the devil fell asleep instantly. The next morning, when he got up for breakfast, there was Erky stirring the porridge. How did you get here?" the devil asked. I mean, where's my wife?" "Your wife? Don't you remember?" Erky said. "You cut off her head last night, and then we threw her into the lake. Bed and all. No one will be the wiser." What? the devil cried, and he was about to fly into an awful rage when Erky restrained him by saying, "There now, master. You're not going to lose your temper over a little thing like a wife, are you? Remember our bargain." So the devil was forced again to swallow his anger. No, "I'm not going to lose my temper," he said, "but I tell you frankly, Erky, I don't think that was a nice trick for you to play on me." Well, the devil felt lonely not having a wife about the house, so in a few days he decided to go off wooing for a new one. "And Erky," he said, "I expect you to keep busy while I'm gone. Here's a keg of red paint. Now get to work. Have the house all blazing red by the time I get back." "All blazing red," Erky repeated. "Very well, master. Trust me, to have it all blazing red by the time you get back." As soon as the devil was gone, Erky set the house afire, which honestly is a pretty good pun. And in a short time, the whole sky was lighted up with the red glow of the flames. In great fright, the devil hurried back and got there in time to see the house in one mass of fire. "You see, master," Erky said, "I've done as you told me. Looks very pretty, doesn't it? All blazing red." The devil almost choked with rage. You, he began, but Erky restrained him by saying, "There now, master. You're not going to lose your temper over a little thing like a house afire, are you? Remember our bargain." The devil swallowed hard and said, "No,
No, I'm not gonna lose my temper. But I must say, Erky, that I'm very much annoyed with you.
The next day, the devil wanted to go a-wooing again. Before he started, he said to Erky,
No nonsense this time. Well, I'm gone. You're to build 3 bridges over the lake. But they're not to be built of wood or stone or iron or earth. Do you understand?
Erky pretended to be frightened. That's a pretty hard task you've given me, master.
Hard or easy? See that it gets done,
the devil said. Now, what do you think he's going to do? The answer to every one of Erky's problems is, of course, the murder of animals. Erky waited until the devil was gone, and then he went out to the field and slaughtered all the devil's cattle. From the bones of the cattle, he laid 3 bridges across the lake, using the skulls for one bridge, the ribs for another, and the legs and the hooves for the third. My God, how many did he kill? To make a bridge out of hooves? Then when the devil got back, Erky met him, pointing to the bridges, and said, "See, master, there they are. 3 bridges put together without stick, stone, iron, or a bit of earth." When the devil found out that all his cattle had been slaughtered to give bones for the bridges, he was ready to kill Erky. But Erky quieted him by saying, "There now, master. You're not gonna lose your temper over a little thing like the slaughter of a few cattle, are you? Remember our bargain." So again, the devil had to swallow his anger.
No, he said, I'm not going to lose my temper exactly. But I just want to tell you, Erky, I don't think you're behaving well.
The devil's wooing was successful, and pretty soon he brought home a new wife. The new wife didn't like having Erky about, so the devil promised her he'd kill the boy. I'm sorry. It just occurred to me what a crazy conversation that is. Like, if you came home and you didn't like someone's roommate, let's say you just got married or maybe you're dating. You're like, your roommate, he's a lot. And he was like, don't worry, I'll kill him. Like, would that not be a red flag? I mean, I guess he did marry the devil. Erky overheard this, of course. And that night he put the churn in his bed under the covers. Where his head ordinarily would be, he put a big round stone. Then he himself curled up on the stove and went comfortably to sleep. During the night, the devil took his great sword from the wall and went over to Erky's bed. The first blow hit the round stone and nicked the sword. His second blow struck sparks. Mercy me, the devil thought. He's got a mighty hard head. I'd better strike lower. The third stroke he struck... with the third stroke, he hit the churn a mighty blow. The hoops flew apart and the churn collapsed. The devil went chuckling back to bed. He said boastfully to his wife, I got him that time. But the next morning when he woke up, he didn't feel like laughing, for there was Erky, as lively as ever, pretending nothing had happened. What? Cried the devil in amazement. Didn't you feel anything strike you last night while you were sleeping? Oh, I did feel a few mosquitoes brushing my cheek, Erky said. Nothing else. So that night, the devil told Erky to sleep in the threshing barn, full of hay. Erky carried his cot down to the threshing floor, and then when it was dark, he shifted into the hay barn where he... Sorry, that's right, not full of hay. It's full of grain. where he slept comfortably all night. During the night, the devil set fire to the threshing barn. In the early dawn, Erky carried his cot back to the place of the threshing barn, and in the morning, when the devil came out, the first thing he saw was Erky unharmed and peacefully sleeping among the smoking ruins.
"Mercy me, Erky," he shouted, shaking him awake. "Have you been asleep all night?"
Erky sat up and yawned. "Yeah, I've had a fine night's sleep. But I did feel a little bit chilly."
"Chilly?"
the devil gasped. And after that, the devil's one thought was to get rid of Erky.
"That boy is getting on my nerves," he told his wife. "I just can't stand him much longer. What are we going to do about him?"
They discussed one plan after another, and at last decided that the only way they'd ever get rid of him would be to move away, leave him behind.
"I'll send him out to the forest to chop wood all day," the devil said, "and while he's gone, we'll row ourselves and all our belongings out to an island. When he comes back, he won't know where we've gone."
But of course, what do you think happened? Erky overheard this plan, and the next day, when they were sure he was safely at work in the forest, he slipped back and hid himself in the bedclothes. Well, when they got to the island and began unpacking things, there was Erky in the bedclothes. The devil's new wife complained bitterly. "If you really loved me," she said, "you'd cut off that boy's head."
"I've tried to cut it off," the devil declared, "and I can never do it. Plague take such a boy. I've always known the Finns were an obstinate lot, but I must say I've never met one as bad as Erky. He's too much for me."
But the devil's wife kept on complaining until at last the devil promised that he would try once again to cut off Erky's head. "Very well," his wife said. "Tonight when he's asleep, I'll wake you." Well, what with the moving and everything, the wife herself was tired, and as soon as she went to bed, she fell asleep. That gave Erky just the very chance he needed to try on the new wife the trick he'd played on the old one. Without waking her, he carried her to his bed and then laid himself down in her place of the devil. Then he waked up the devil and reminded him that he'd promised to cut off Erky's head. The poor old devil got up, went over to Erky's bed, and of course, cut off the head of his new wife. The next morning, when he'd found out what he'd done, he was perfectly furious.
"You get right out of here, Erky," he roared. "I never want to see you again."
"There now, master," Erky said. "You're not gonna lose your temper over a little thing like a new wife, are you?" Or dead wife, rather.
"I'm so going to lose my temper," the devil shouted. "And what's more, it isn't a little thing. I liked this wife, I did, and I don't know where I'll get another one I like as well. So you just clear out of here and be quick about it, too."
"Very well, master," Erky said. "I'll go, but not until you pay me what you owe me."
"What I owe you?" bellowed the devil. "What about all you owe me for my house and my cattle and my old wife and my dear new wife and everything?"
"You've lost your temper," Erky said, "and you've got to pay me a patch of your hide big enough to sole a pair of boots. That was our bargain." The devil roared and blustered, but Erky was firm. He wouldn't budge a step until the devil had allowed him to slit a great patch off his back. That piece of devil's hide made the finest soles that a pair of boots ever had. It wore for years and years and years. In fact, Erky is still tramping around on those same soles. The fame of them has spread all over the land and has got so that now people stop Erky on the highway to look at his wonderful boots soled with the devil's hide. Highway, by the way, not anywhere near our modern sense of it. Just sort of a a popular dirt road, maybe some cobblestone. Travelers from foreign countries are deeply interested when they hear about the boots, and when they meet Erky and they question him closely. Tell us, they beg him, how did you get the devil's hide in the first place? Erky always laughs and makes the same answer. I got it by not losing my temper, and also killing a lot of animals. As for the devil, he's never made another bargain like that with a Finn. And that is apparently a story for children about not losing your temper, because then you get to skin the devil and get great boots. It is interesting to me, because I kind of knew this as a passing fact, but it is interesting to me that so often in these stories, great shoes are the greatest thing. Like, it's the thing you would do almost anything for, while wearing shoes. And of course, we take for granted the fact that shoes are like a dime a dozen now. You can always get shoes. But, or at least in areas that I live. Obviously, I know that the world has different conditions for different people. But because of that, you take for granted what it is to be without shoes. Especially when you're living in a place like Finland. You know, your toes will freeze off if you have bad boots that are wet all the time. So, yeah, having basically indestructible shoes would be a great reward. Still, quite a bit of animal murder. Erky, GS likes the Erky name, thinks it's a cute name. I'm probably not doing it quite justice. I imagine there's a bit of a Finnish accent that makes it sound a little less like Erk. But there is, on that point, a message here from GS that says, is this where we get the word irk from? He's very irksome. Let's just pretend that's the case. This author is sadistic. Yeah, probably that was about the oxen. He could have made rope. Now that's interesting, because rope's been made out of a lot of things over the years. I guess it depends on what he made the rope out of. I assume talking about the bridges here that he makes out of the bones of a field of cattle. Anyhow, I'm feeling okay, so maybe I'll do the Enchanted Grouse. Okay, and this story also comes to us from Mighty Miko, a book of Finnish tales and Finnish fairy tales and folk tales. It's called The Enchanted Grouse. It's a little shorter than the last. This is the story of Heli and the Little Locked Box. There was once an old couple who lived with their married son and his wife. The son's name was Heli. He was a dutiful son, but his wife was a scold. She was always finding fault with the old people and with her husband, and for that matter, everybody else as well. One morning, she saw her husband taking out his bow and arrows, and she said, "Where are you going now?" "I'm going hunting," he told her. "Isn't that just like you?" she cried. "You're going to have a good time hunting, and you don't give a thought to me, who have to stay home alone with the two stupid old people." "If I didn't go hunting," Heli said, "and shoot something, we'd have nothing to put in the pot for dinner, and then you would have reason to scold." At that, the woman burst into tears. "Of course, as usual, blame me. Whatever happens, it's my fault." There's a tone to this that I think you'll start to pick up on. Poor Heli hurried off, hoping that by the time he returned, his wife would be in a calmer state of mind. He had small success with his hunting. He shot arrow after arrow, but always missed his mark. Then, when he had only one arrow left, he saw a grouse standing in some brushwood, so near that, there was little likelihood of his missing it. He took good aim. Before he could fire, the grouse said, "Don't shoot me, brother. Take me home alive." Heli paused. Then he shook his head. I've got to shoot you, for we've nothing to put in the pot for dinner. Again he aimed his arrow, and again the grouse said, Don't shoot me, brother. Take me home alive. For the second time, Helly paused. I'd like to spare you, he said, but my wife... What would my wife say if I came home empty-handed? He took aim again, and a third time the grouse said, Don't shoot me, brother. Take me home alive. At that, Helly dropped his arrow. I don't care what she says. I can't shoot a creature that begs so pitifully for its life. Very well, Mr. Grouse. I'll do as you say. I'll take you home alive, but don't blame me if my wife wrings your neck. He took the grouse up in his arms and started homeward. Feed me for a year, the grouse said, and I'll reward you. When they reached home and Helly's wife saw the grouse, she cried out petulantly. Is that all you got? And out hunting all morning. There won't be dinner enough for 4? The grouse isn't to be killed, Helly announced. I'm going to keep it for a year and feed it. It won't take much to feed a grouse, the old man remarked, but the wife flew into a passion. What? Feed a useless bird when there isn't enough to feed your own flesh and blood? But Helly was firm. Despite her threats, his wife did not dare to maltreat the grouse. At the end of the year, a grouse grew a copper feather in its tail, which it dropped in the dooryard. Then it disappeared. Ha! Laughed Helly's wife. A copper feather! There's your reward for feeding that thankless bird a whole year, and now it's escaped. But the next day, the grouse returned. Feed me another year, said to Helly, and I'll reward you. One thing I'm curious about is, does this bird say anything outside of these lines, or does it just sit there silently all year? Because I feel like that's a strange relationship. His wife raised an awful to-do over this, but Helly was firm, and for another year he fed and petted the grouse. At the end of the second year, the grouse grew a silver feather in its tail, which it dropped in the dooryard. Then it disappeared. 1 silver feather, Helly's wife cried. So that's all you get for feeding that thankless bird a whole year, and now it's escaped. But it hadn't. Returned the next day. Feed me another year, it said to Helly, and I'll reward you. At the end of the third year, the grouse grew a golden feather in its tail, and when it dropped that in the dooryard, the scolding wife hadn't so much to say, for a golden feather was, after all, pretty good pay for a few handfuls of grain. For a day, the grouse disappeared, and then when it returned, it said to Helly, Get on my back, and I'll reward you. I don't know if you guys know what a grouse looks like, but I cannot imagine what it looks like for a grown man to sit on the back of a grouse. It's like a fat pigeon. Helly did so, and the grouse, rising high in the air, flew far away. On and on it flew until it reached the broad ocean, and over the ocean it flew until Helly could see nothing but water in whatever direction he looked. He said to himself with a shudder, I hope I can hold on. As he spoke, the grouse slipped from beneath him, and he fell down and down and down. However, before he touched the water, the grouse swooped under him and caught him again high up into the air. He had this same terrible experience a second time and a third time, and each time he thought his last moment had arrived. Now, the grouse told him, You know what my feelings were when you threatened me 3 times to shoot me with your arrows. The man fed you for 3 years, and you're still hung up on the arrow. You've taught me a lesson, Helly said. After that, the grouse flew on, and at last it said, Look straight ahead, master, and tell me what you see. Helly shaded his eyes and looked. Far, far ahead, I see what looks like a copper column. Good, the grouse said. This is the home of my oldest sister. She'll be overjoyed to see us, and when she hears how you've spared my life, she'll want to make you a present and will offer you various things. Take my advice and tell her that the only thing you want is her little locked box, the key to which is lost. She won't give you that, except nothing. The grouse's oldest sister received them most hospitably, and when she had heard their story, at once offered Helly anything he might like from among her treasures. Then, give me your little locked box, the key to which is lost, Helly said. The older sister shook her head. My little lock box? Who told you about that? I'm sorry, but I cannot give you that. Take anything else? No, Helly said. That or nothing. When the older sister could not be prevailed upon to give away her little lockbox, the grouse had Helly mount his back once more, and off they flew. We'll visit my second sister now, he said. If she offers you a present, ask her for her little locked box without a key, and accept nothing else. On and on they flew until the oldest sister's castle was far behind. Look, master, the grouse said. Look straight ahead and tell me what you see. Helly shaded his eyes and looked. Far ahead I see something that is like a silver cloud. That, said the grouse, is the silver castle of my second sister. At the silver castle, the second sister received them with joy, and when she heard who Helly was at once declared that she wanted to show him her gratitude by making him a gift. Ask from me what you will, she said, and you shall have it. But when he asked for her little lockbox without a key, she cried out, No, 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 not that, anything else. But I don't want anything else, Helly said. When the grouse saw that his second sister was not to be parted from her little locked box, he bade Helly mount his back, and off they flew again. We'll go to my youngest sister this time, he said. If she offers you a present, I ask for the same thing. On and on they flew until the silver castle was lost to view. Now, master, look ahead, tell me what you see. Helly shaded his eyes and looked. I seemed to see a golden haze like the sun behind a cloud. That's the golden castle of my youngest sister. They arrived, and the youngest sister threw her arms about the grouse, for she loved him dearly and had not seen him for a long time. Welcome, brother, she said, and welcome also to you, Helly. And then she offered Helly a present, and when she asked for her little locked box without a key, she gave it to him at once. It is my most precious possession, she said, but you may have it, for you spared my dear brother's life when others would have taken it. After they had rested and feasted, they bade the youngest sister farewell, and Helly, with his precious box held tightly in one hand, mounted the grouse's back, and off they flew towards home. Be careful of that box, the grouse said. Don't let it out of your hands until we reach some beautiful spot where you'd like to always live. They passed high mountains and wooded lakes and fertile valleys. Shall we stop here? The grouse asked. Or here, or here. But always, Helly said, no, not here. At last they reached home, and the grouse told Helly that now they must part forever. By sparing my life 3 times, the grouse said, and then feeding me for 3 years, you have broken the enchantment that bound me. Now I shall have to go about any longer as a grouse, but shall be able to resume my natural shape. Farewell, Helly. But when you find the spot where you think you would like to always live, drop the box. You'll find you have a treasure that will more than reward you for your kindness to me. The grouse disappeared, and Helly said to himself, Where do I want to live? Always, but right here at home with my dear old father and mother and my wife, who is my wife even if she does scold me sometimes. So there at home, after all had supper together, he dropped the box on the floor, and it broke, and out of it arose a beautiful castle with servants and riches and everything that Helly had always wanted but never had. And Helly and his old father and mother and his wife lived in it and were happy. Gradually his wife got over her habit of scolding, for when you're happy, you haven't anything to scold about. That is the Enchanted Grouse. GS says this story is the opposite of the last story. Sparing animals. That is true. I had not considered that. Well, that was the Enchanted Grouse from Mighty Miko. Symbolically, I haven't a clue what it means. I know that fairy tales and folk tales love threes. And writing to this day still follows that pattern. It's always rules of three. And the problem with that is trying to determine what that rule of three is related to is very hard. Like, three could relate if it's more Christian oriented to the Trinity, or three could relate to any number of other pagan symbology that has 3 points. I don't know. The weather patterns, there's tons of things that come in groups of 3. But one thing that I did not expect from the story that I did find quite charming is that in the end, the wife isn't like punished or anything. If anything, I think she's sort of painted to be a bit young. Which would make sense because that wasn't uncommon for older men to take young women for wives. But she's not really and to be honest, like, I'm kind of on her side. Like, if we were starving and whoever it was like, I didn't get a paycheck, but here's a bird to feed, it told me to take care of it, I'd be like, what are you talking about, right? So I don't know. I think it's an interesting take because, as GS says, it's about home and family. Well, I don't really have much more to add than those 2 stories. So thank you everybody who came by to watch our tales. If you enjoyed Fireside Fairytales, please remember to give us a like. YouTube is a cruel mistress, and it is a good help. We did get a bunch of new subscribers, so if you're watching that now, thank you so much for dropping by and giving me a shot. I am glad to meet you, even if I don't know you. I'm glad you've come here to meet me, I guess. I hope you enjoy your time here. And thank you so much, GS, for keeping me company in the chat. Feel free, by the way, anytime you guys are catching this live, to come and say hello in the chat. Or if you missed it live, you can drop me a comment below and I'll talk about it in future streams. But thank you very much, and I'm going to go turn my air conditioning on. But to keep the aesthetics of this show pure and immersive, I will keep the fire going for you. I hope you get a good sleep. Take care.